affair played a cruel joke on me. He sent my husband his Johnson pick and said, "Your wife loves it." Infidelity is often seen as one of the most significant betrayals in a relationship. It can destroy trust, create emotional turmoil, and lead to irreversible changes in the dynamics of a marriage. This essay explores a deeply personal and painful experience that encapsulates the destructive power of an affair. It is a story of how a moment of weakness led to a catastrophic revelation, with consequences that echoed through every aspect of my life. So my male 47 husband and I, female 37, met at one of the Living Legends live performances, which was A.I. Green's soul concert that was held in Orpheum Theater, LA, in the year 2020. He was sitting on a seat next to mine, so as we listened to the lovely soul music that Mr. Green was performing, we discussed how great he was and how his songs always find a way to connect to the heart. I mean, even if you were the person who didn't believe in love, but once you listened to A.I. Green's music, you would think again about finding love. Arthur was a very smart, handsome, and funny man to be around. You know, when you just connect with someone on the first day of seeing or meeting them, that was me and Arthur. We just clicked, you know. We had a lot in common and our goals collided. He was that missing piece I've been looking for all those years. A day later, I called Arthur and asked for a meeting with him. Luckily, he agreed. So we met and talked, well, more like I talked. I told him about my past failed relationships and my fears because he had already confessed his feelings for me, which he actually understood because I didn't expect him to understand, but he surprised me. He told me that no one was perfect and we all learn from our past mistakes. So in order to move on from our past, we have to accept them and learn from them. He said a lot of sweet words that made me believe that I could change. I mean, God had given me another chance to love, so I had to embrace it and be grateful to it. But I guess some things are just meant to be. I was just made to be alone. After our talk, we made our relationship official. We had a lot in common. The chemistry and connection was there, you know. I fell really hard for him. He made me feel good enough. Not to mention the way he looked at me. It was like I was the only important and precious thing that existed in his world. He treated me like a queen, spoiling me like a child. Life has been great. I wouldn't say we had problems, but to me, he was my lover and also my best friend. We talked about everything and anything you know. Every moment with him was never a dull moment. It was great. He used to fulfill my desires, give me everything I needed from a man. He supported, and most of all, he understood. I couldn't get him off my head. We chatted every day, and I was actually falling harder for the guy. The attention he would give me was on top of the world. He would always ask if I was still okay. He was really fussy over me in a charming way, though, and I loved the attention he gave me. We went out a lot. He introduced me to his friends and some of his business associates whenever I would accompany him to those business gala dinners, and to some of his employees, including his personal assistant that he was working with. It was truly a great moment for me. He was also everything I needed in a man, and he was very understanding and loving. So I thought I had found the one, the love of my life, but I guess I was wrong. The S*X was okay, but mostly he was a 2 times a week vanilla kind of guy, but he indulged me when I wanted to do some more adventurous things and was generally attentive to what I needed. He rarely initiated, though, which was a bummer for me. But I was so happy and lacked nothing besides the fact that he would go on business trips a lot, but he was going with me if I was available and spoiled me rotten. But look, I messed all that up and went for stones while the diamond was right in front of my eyes. Arthur was everything a woman would ask for and more. He was the type of a guy that most women fantasize and dream about. Though like any relationship, we experienced our fair share of ups and downs. However, a small mistake would soon test the strength of our bond in an unexpected way. Though I still think that if some things are not meant for you, they are just not meant to be for you, and love was some of the things that were not meant for me. That was how I would console myself every day whenever I think of my past and think about how perfect my life was with Mike. But I ruined all that. All because of what? Lust, lack of affection, and greed. Because what I did is called being greedy. I was not enough and grateful for what I already had in my life. Instead, I went out and looked for something that I had thought was better while something better was in front of my eyes. I sometimes would think, what if he leaves me someday and finds someone else better, who would be on his level, and I would be left alone to pick up the broken pieces of my fragile heart. I love my husband very much, well, more like I still love him, but you know, sometimes love alone is not enough. I'm not a woman who would cheat on her husband, but the way he had distanced himself from me, it made me feel like we were somehow losing connection, or the connection that we once had that disconnected. I felt like I had lost him as a husband and my child had lost him as a father. It was just too much to handle. My marriage to Arthur was, by all accounts, a typical one. We had been together for over a decade, sharing the ups and downs of life, raising our 2 children and building a stable home. However, as the years passed, the initial passion we had for each other faded. The responsibilities of work, parenting, and everyday life took precedence over our relationship. Our conversations became mundane, and the intimacy we once shared dwindled. So I went to this corner that sells Jamaican traditional food around where I was renting when I was on a leisure holiday. I bumped into a very handsome, well-built, and humble guy when I had just placed my order. The guy asked if he could join in my table since the restaurant was full and I was sitting alone. I gave the guy a go-ahead and he joined me. We waited for our food over some light conversation. During my trip, I made a terrible mistake. I had an affair. I thought I could keep it a secret, but I guess nothing stays under the carpet for too long. I had picked up that he was also not from Jamaica, but he was from Switzerland, and he was there for leisure because of the warm weather in St. James. We talked a lot and even shared our Jamaican numbers since we had found out that we were renting in the same place around St. James. The guy introduced himself as Christopher Watkins, male, 32. He was a good company and a funny guy. He told me that he loved visiting Caribbean islands. We shared a lot, and I would say that I enjoyed my stay in Jamaica. I had actually found something interesting to write about in my book. Andrew and I talked up until our orders were called since we were not eating in. I wanted to enjoy my Jamaican traditional meal indoors, which was why I had ordered it as a takeaway. Christopher asked to give me a lift from the traditional food corner to my apartment that I was renting. I couldn't decline his offer because I had taken a cab when I went to that corner. There was just something attractive about him, and I still don't know what actually drove me to Chris, short for Christopher. Maybe it was his charm or something. I don't know. I was so taken by him. For some time, I had forgotten about my husband that I had left back at home. Chris became my foreign friend that I had never had. We traveled together around the island. I really enjoyed his company. So one day, Chris asked that we visit the newly opened bar near where we were staying. I couldn't say no. So we went, we drank, danced, and had so much fun. When it was time to go back to my apartment, I don't know what happened, but Chris and I kissed and it felt so right. I don't know why it felt like that, but it felt so good. To my surprise, I didn't even feel guilty when I woke up in Chris's apartment. I knew that I was doing something that jeopardized my relationship with Arthur, but I felt like I needed to explore other intimate moments so that I would know how it felt like to be intimate with another person. I mean, in intimate moments, I had only shared them with Arthur only. I didn't know how it felt like to explore other intimate styles and positions, and Andrew made me experience all that. I knew that if my husband was to find out, I would lose a lot and hell would break loose. I was doing what was against my marriage law and my vows that I had made in front of the Lord, my family, and friends. I was jeopardizing my marriage and my relationship with Arthur. I love my husband, or must I say my ex-husband, so much, but I also needed to feel myself for once. I wanted to explore other things and explore a new venture of intimacy. Chris's drive was really on another level. I felt like it was my first time having such a great intimate moment. Sure, my husband was explorative and did me so great, but Chris's exploration was top-notch. I enjoyed every moment with him, from how he was exploring my body, the way he was touching me, kissing me with his soft and tender lips. I knew there and then that I had caught some feelings for the guy. Our secret affair went on since I had extended my stay in Jamaica so that I would have enough time with Chris. I think I had fallen for the guy, or am I wrong? I felt like the guy knew me and what my body needed without even asking for it. His intimate drive drove me sane into a point that it somehow felt like I had been brainwashed because I couldn't even think about the marriage that I was putting at risk. I was jeopardizing my marriage knowing very well that if Arthur was to find out, I would be husbandless and maybe divorced. Little did I know that my husband had actually planned something drastic for me. I was busy enjoying my moments with Chris. Little did I know my husband somehow found out about my affair and things took a turn for the worst. I was enjoying my time away, exploring new places. Plus, it was my last day in Jamaica. I knew that I had to go back home when suddenly I got a notification on my phone. It's a text from my husband, and let's just say, it wasn't a happy one. He had somehow discovered my secret and was absolutely furious. I knew Arthur when he was angry, and I knew when he was enraged, and in the text that he had sent me, he was really enraged. Joe wrote that he thought he had sent me to the trip because he wanted me to relax and have some good and alone time and take a break from writing and running a company and taking care of the kids. But that was the thanks he gets by going outside our marriage and committing adultery. He then said a lot of hurtful words that made me feel so much guilt in my heart. My mind had come back to functioning well. Mind you, that time Chris had gone back to Switzerland. Not to sound selfish or whatever, but I missed Chris so much. Well, more like I missed his S*****. I know it was really wrong of me, but I just couldn't help it. Andrew was giving me more than what I was getting from my own husband. He knew how to explore certain parts of the body. His touches were magical, and I would always melt on his touch. It was like he had gone to school for his experience and skills in intimacy. You know, when someone had passed with straight A's at school for some subject that they loved. That was Chris. It was like he had some sort of an intimacy qualification. Was I falling hard for the guy? But I don't think so. I missed Chris to a point that I actually found myself trying to call him, but it went straight to voicemail. I had even forgotten that I only had his Jamaican number and not his actual number. I was frustrated because I needed him, at least to talk to him, just to hear his voice. I decided to check him on social media, but I didn't find anything since he didn't even share his social media handles. I didn't know what to do because I really needed the guy. I ended up helping myself while saying Chris's name. I thought I could keep it a secret, but somehow my husband found out. And let me tell you, he was not happy. But wait, it gets worse. As if finding out about my affair wasn't bad enough, my husband decided to take things to the next level. He blocked all my cards, leaving me completely stranded without any access to money. Talk about being screwed. I couldn't believe it. Here I am in a foreign place with no way to pay for anything. It was like a nightmare come true. I had no idea how I was going to survive the rest of my trip. As if the emotional turmoil wasn't enough, my husband decided to take things a step further. He blocked all my cards. Yes, you heard that right. He cut off my access to any financial resources. Now I know what you're thinking. Why would my husband do something like that? Well, let's just say he wanted to make sure I felt the consequences of my actions. And boy, did he succeed. I couldn't help him. I had thought he would at least wait for me to get home before doing such a drastic act. So there I was, stuck in a foreign island with no money and no way to get home. It's safe to say that this was definitely not how I envisioned my trip to turn out. Yes, I had wronged Arthur in a worst possible way, but wouldn't he at least try and wait for me to get home before doing that? Till today, I'm still trying to figure out how Arthur found out about my affair with Chris. Even though today I regret everything. I even regret going to Jamaica, though I did not regret going to Jamaica like I had planned, which was only a business trip, and I regret that I had accepted my husband's offer to have a trip because now it had destroyed everything that me and Arthur had been through. You know, I tried booking the plane ticket using my cards, but they were all declining. It was so embarrassing and humiliating to hear a person telling you that your card was declining. Mind you, that time I didn't even have any friends nor siblings, but I missed him so much. From there, I knew that I was completely screwed. I have no money to pay for my accommodation, food, or even transportation back home. I feel trapped and helpless. I was lucky because I had cash that I had withdrawn, which helped me pay for the rent. Well, I moved to the most affordable flat in St. James near the beach. Chris and I couldn't get a chance to get to know each other on a deeper level. It was like the only thing that had connected us was intimacy. And it was really dumb and stupid of me to not try and find out more about the guy. I just couldn't believe Arthur. I mean, how he could do something like that to the person he claimed to love. I was so heartbroken to the point that I took the last money that I had and went to find a cheaper place to crash until I had found the way back home. It was a wake-up call for me. I never thought that my actions would have such severe consequences. I took my husband's trust for granted, and now I am paying the price. One thing I would say I was grateful for throughout my relationship with Arthur is the fact that he took his time to teach me about the importance of money and money itself. He would always tell me to always have at least $200 or $300 notes with me, which would be hard cash just in case I get in some sort of trouble or I face a problem. That money would help me for backup when I face a situation. That time in Jamaica, Arthur's life lessons came in handy, and I appreciated them at that time because I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have any cash with me. I tried calling him, but his phone was ringing unanswered. I needed answers on why he did what he did to me and how he found out about what I was doing in Jamaica. I was so angry at him to a point that I even felt like I would slap him across his face if he was closer. I know what I did, and I am not justifying what I did, but what my husband or ex-husband did was too extreme and kind of low even for himself. He should have waited for me to come back right, and as if that wasn't enough, the money that I had was about to run out. I called my friend Mika to help me, but I had run out of airtime. Mind you, I wanted to call the landline number at her mother's house since she would sometimes not hear the phone ringing. My hopes were gone. I was about to be stranded and homeless on a foreign island because my husband had decided to just block all my bank accounts, including the one that I had been saving on. Talk about a bummer. A month passed and I was still in Jamaica. I had a hope that maybe Arthur would at least call me and tell me to come back home or at least unblock my cards. If he had blocked the joint account, I would understand because there is both our saving on that account, but no. The big man blocked my personal accounts, including the offshore account. I had tried calling him with the small airtime that I had bought, but he didn't answer my call. When I called my friend Mika for help, she told me that she was going to ask her mother for some cash to at least transfer to me so I can go back home. But days and weeks passed and still nothing from Mika. At first I got worried and thought that maybe something had happened to her because even her phone was no longer available. I got really worried, a lot was on my mind, and I was thinking of the worst only. I prayed so hard and asked God to protect them from Arthur because I really didn't know what he would do to them just to see me suffer. Later that day, Chris organized a transport for me to the place that he had rented. You know that moment when you and the other person just do things roughly, recklessly, and fast, like you have been yearning for each other for too long. That was what happened when Chris and I saw each other. It was like we had missed each other so bad to a point that we couldn't even say hi to each other. We made sweet but reckless lovemaking. He gave a sweet and high orgasm. I don't really know when last I had such an orgasm. Or maybe I can say I've had such an orgasm in my whole dating and marriage life. I had never gotten or experienced such an extent and mind-blowing intimacy. We made a lot of S*** to a point that I had even forgotten about my nonchalant of a husband. After we were done acting like we had been missing each other for years. When our session ended, we ended up taking a shower together. I was actually the one who needed a cold shower because Chris really did a number on me down there. He really explored every inch of my body with his tender, loving, and soft hands. I really loved it, you know. I even forget that I was married to the love of my life, but he was boring and too busy to even explore our S*** life. I started hanging out a lot with Chris. He was really a very great distraction, and he made me feel so much alive again. I know it was really wrong of me to get attached to a stranger that I had met in a foreign country, but I just couldn't help it. Chris made me feel noticed and appreciated, you know. He made sure to always compliment me, even the smallest things I did. He noticed me. The way Chris and I got close was somehow scary because I had become carefree and cared less about other things. It was like my mind was moving from one dimension to another whenever I was with Chris, and I loved that feeling of feeling free and full of life. The more we spent time together, the more I was falling for him. He was the guy I had been praying for and wanted in my life. Most of the time I would feel lonely, and like there was a missing puzzle that would make my heart full and complete whenever Andrew was not around, or he would be busy checking up on me the whole day. At first, I justified my affair with Chris by telling myself that it was just a little harmless fun. But as time went on, I realized that I had fallen deeply in love with him. I knew that I had to end things with Arthur after the stunt that he had pulled, but I didn't know how to do it without hurting him. One side of my heart still loved Arthur while the other was still falling harder for Andrew. Was I in love with Chris? Well, I think so, because I couldn't live without at least hearing the guy's voice. Was I acting like a Delilah? As much as I wanted to set Arthur free, my heart wouldn't let me to. I don't know what was happening to me. I was stuck in between two men, and both of them meant something to me. They had that special place in my heart, you know, so I was stuck in between a rock and a very hard place. What do you think I should have done? I know I should have released one man and not lead him on, but I loved them both, and I didn't know what to do about that. I still had faith that Arthur would change and become the husband and lover that I had fallen in love with, not the boring and busy grandpa wannabe that he was. So I continued to see both men, hoping that one of them would eventually realize that they were the one for me. But as the months went by, I only became more and more confused and unhappy. Chris had started distancing himself also, like we were no longer seeing each other more often like how we used to, even though he was still getting time or a chance to call or text me to check if I was doing okay. As much as that was still something compared to what Arthur was doing, it felt like I was losing a piece of myself. One day I was spending the night with Chris. Yes, I was still in Jamaica, but I had planned to go back home the following week when Chris also goes back to Switzerland. The way my relationship with Chris was a close relationship, I had told him about my husband and how my marriage was. Mind you, at that time he was also married, but his wife passed on after she had delivered his last-born child. It is a very sad story to share or listen to, but I don't know what drew me to Chris. It was like the more we shared our life stories, the more we got closer and closer to each other. And I was falling much harder and dangerous to the guy. As I was chilling with Chris in his rented apartment, he went to the bathroom as the person who was going to come back sooner. So the time he went to the bathroom, we were talking about my marriage and how much I was not satisfied sexually. While Chris was in the bathroom, I received a call from Arthur, which really took me by surprise because I had thought he had forgotten about me and the fact that he had a wife that he pulled a stunt on and left her stranded in a foreign country. I was on a call with Arthur, hearing him apologizing and asking me when I will come back home. Chris got back speaking and didn't notice that I was on a call with someone. He asked me when will I stand up for myself and leave the loser that I had married because no sane person would block their wife's important accounts. while knowing that the wife was outside the country, then act like a girl just because he had found out about the night I had with him, Chris. He kept talking. I tried signaling him that I was on the call with someone else, but the guy just ignored me and continued telling me that I had married a shame of a husband and called him a loser again. He even mentioned that he will show Arthur what humanity is because he will teach him a great lesson. On the other hand, Arthur was hearing the whole thing imagined. I was just tongue-tied. I didn't know how to respond and who to respond to because on the other side, Arthur was busy asking why I had told our marital issues to my affair. Then Arthur, started throwing tantrums at me and telling me, well, more like demanding me to go back home if I didn't want him to be the one to fetch me from Jamaica. Arthur was super enraged to a point that I felt like if I was near him, I don't know and can't imagine what would have happened to me. Arthur is a very private person and he doesn't want his life matters to be known by the outside world. So I had made the worst mistake ever for sharing my marriage predicament with Chris. Later on, I had left my phone on the table as I was busy making some refreshments for Chris and I since we had decided to camp indoors. You know, when you leave your phone carelessly, you don't even think that the person you trust would actually do you bad. My phone did have a password, but Chris knew it. So which is why I didn't have any problem when I found Chris busy with my phone. He had lied to me and said he was sending some pictures that we once took when we went to the beach, not knowing that the gent was actually destroying my marriage further and did the unthinkable. The following week, I went back to the US. Well, being in Jamaica really helped me focus more on a client's book that she wanted my company to publish, so instead of virtual communications, we would meet up and go into detail with other information that was missing or change certain things. You know what Arthur did was somehow a blessing in disguise. So I knew that as I was going back to the States, I had to publish the book first thing when I got there because we were done with everything that was needed to complete the book. When I got home, I found Arthur looking like he was ready to murder anything that made him angry. I knew that I had to be honest with him without waiting for him to even ask about my abomination. I had to tell him that I was in love with Chris, but I didn't know how he would react. I know it was very wrong of me to hide such an abomination and serious thing from him and for him to find out the way he did. But I was confused and didn't know what to do. So I continued leading him on even though my heart was slowly falling out of love with Arthur. I knew there and then that my marriage had been ruined, and there was no chance of survival in it. After I had confessed everything to Arthur, I decided to move out and go to Mika's place for a couple of days while I would be looking for a new apartment not far from the company. So there was this day when I was at work in my company busy publishing a client's book. I was called by one of my editors telling me that something was happening outside. I had to rush and check it out. It didn't even come to me that my car was being repossessed. I asked the people who were busy repossessing my car why they were doing that. Yes, the car was brought by Arthur as a gift on our first-year anniversary, and I had thought that maybe it was fully paid out. The trucker who was taking my car told me that the owner of the car had asked them to take it. I tried telling them that I was the owner of the car. But to my surprise, the car wasn't written under my name, meaning the owner of the car that I was driving belonged to Arthur. I just couldn't believe him, you know. So he had decided to take back the car that he had bought for me out of love. Worst part, he decided to send the repossessing company to take the car during office hours in front of my employees so he can make a joke out of me. I think that was just very low even for him. I had no other choice but to take my work and go back to Mia's house to work from home. When I got home, the first thing that I was greeted with by Mia was if I had checked my socials. You know, since I had a busy day, I couldn't check my phone, so when I checked it, boom! I was trending, my pictures were all over the internet, and I was being called by names. Oh, before my pictures went viral, Arthur showed me pictures that were sent by Chris to him. So Christopher had sent pictures of his Johnson and wrote, "Your wife loves it, loser." You know, when I say I was shocked and angry would be an understatement because I was boiling inside. I couldn't believe that Chris would do this to me, to my marriage. Sure, I had fallen for him along the way, but he had no right to do what he did. I hated him for that because I am the one who paid the price because of his forwardness. The impact of my actions reverberated through every aspect of my life. Our children were the innocent victims, caught in the crossfire of my betrayal. They missed their father, and their once happy and secure home was now filled with tension and uncertainty. I tried to keep a semblance of normalcy, but the strain was evident. Arthur's absence was a constant reminder of my infidelity. The house felt empty without him, and every corner held memories of our life together. I was overwhelmed with regret and sorrow, realizing too late the gravity of my mistake. My affair with Chris, which had once seemed like an escape from my problems, had only created more pain and heartache. This experience taught me valuable lessons about myself and relationships. I realized the importance of addressing issues openly and honestly, rather than letting them fester. I learned that intimacy and connection require ongoing effort and that neglecting these aspects can lead to significant problems. The affair and its aftermath were painful, but they also provided an opportunity for growth. I had learned that while trust can be broken, it can also be rebuilt with dedication and effort. Self-reflection was a crucial part of the healing process. It allowed me to understand why I had strayed and what changes I needed to make in my life. I had to confront my insecurities and the underlying issues. Embracing change was a significant part of our journey. I had to let go of old habits and patterns that were detrimental to my marriage. This meant being open to new ways of communicating, resolving conflicts, and expressing love. Change can be uncomfortable and challenging, but it is also necessary for growth. By embracing change, I was able to create a healthier and more fulfilling relationship. Healing is a continuous process that requires time, effort, and patience. It involves addressing emotional wounds and working through them together. I had to be compassionate and understanding with the whole situation. My journey of healing was not linear. There were setbacks and challenges along the way, but each step brought me closer to recovery. I learned to celebrate the small victories and stay focused on our goals. One thing I regret is falling in love and sharing my marital issues with my AP. I will never forget what Chris did, and I don't think I'll forgive him anytime soon. I also hate myself for what happened to my marriage because I was busy chasing stones while I was losing a diamond of a husband. I just want peace in my life now, for me and my children. What should I do?